Yeah, so this is a little bit futuristic, but I feel somewhat comfortable presenting this here. I think this is one of the purposes of the ABC meetings, is to sort of think outside the box. So I'm going to be thinking way out into the future, perhaps even 100 years out into the future, and hopefully plant some seeds here. So the title of my talk is Reimagining Complex Urban Systems in the Era of Smart Machines and Smart Data. And I should point out that this is actually a collaborative effort between myself and Andrew Crooks from Computational Social Sciences and his student Yang Zhu. So what I'm going to talk about here is basically Fourth Industrial Revolution kind of stuff, and the rise of so-called cyber-physical systems and clusters of disruptive technologies, and what these technologies and their increasing use and integration in smart cities have for complex urban systems, and then talk about the implications for agent-based modeling, and then present some agent-based simulations we did of autonomous vehicles, and then think ahead. It's basically a call for research here. Okay, so we basically have a changing urban landscape. We all know we have the rise of smart automated systems, and much of this is being driven by not only the third industrial revolution and ICT, those kinds of things, first generation robotics, but also, as I mentioned, fourth industrial revolution and these so-called cyber-physical systems, which are clusters of very advanced intelligent technologies. So what I'm talking about here, these kinds of things, advanced robotics, including cloud robotics, drones, 3D printing, Internet of Things, nanotechnology, blockchain, big data, we include that as a technology, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Right now we're at weak AI. We're moving into strong AI, and some believe we'll even move into superintelligence. And all of these technologies are very much integrated, very, very intelligent, and have a lot of interesting implications, and I think for cities in particular. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And so let's just take a quick visual survey of how the landscape is changing. So we all know about robotics in manufacturing processes, but this generation of robotics, very smart, AI-driven kinds of things, automated parking payment. We'll just quickly go through this. Internet of Things to help control and manage large-scale critical infrastructure, personal digital assistants like Siri, and I hate her, Cortana. How many people like Cortana? Don't like her. Automated vehicles. Seeing that right now. Advanced information processing, IBM Watson. IBM Watson is actually behind much of what we see in terms of automation out there, even though it's not this big blue box anymore. It's about this size. Drones for delivery, food delivery. We're now seeing sidewalk robots in some cities delivering pizza and those kinds of things. Some people are talking about sidewalk congestion because of robots. Drones for food service, and even robotics and AI for arts and entertainment, thinking more out into the future, and even robots in the office. And this is not science fiction. We're actually seeing this already. There's actually a town somewhere in Great Britain, I think it's Enfield, maybe Mike Batty knows, where there's a robot called Amelia who's actually interacting with citizens for municipal service requests and actually talking to people. And then, of course, we have this kind of fusion between man and machine, wearable devices, and Ray Kurzweil talks about things like uploading our brains to computers and all these kinds of exciting things. So things are changing, and so what I want to talk about is kind of a different perspective here on shared spaces and smart places. And what I'm talking about here is smart machines combined with smart data, big data, interacting with smart humans in smart places, okay? And the key question that I'm interested in here, and I think this is a fertile area for future research here, is what are the implications of this new technological landscape for social and spatial interaction, and fast, medium, slow dynamics, and related short-term and long-term states and conditions in cities? Okay, that's a tall order. And to explore this, what we can do here is we can think about complex urban systems, complex adaptive systems, and also agent-based modeling. We could talk about each of the different elements that fall within these two things, and how this increase in cyber-physical technologies is influencing things and perhaps influencing ultimately these complex adaptive systems. And then we can also look at some empirical examples as well. Okay, so in terms of man versus machine, just to give you an idea of the current state of things, if you're not familiar with this, I actually follow this on a day-to-day basis. I have feeds coming in. So we have machines, and in terms of automation, machines are very good at manual kinds of tasks, routine kinds of tasks, risky and dangerous. You see this a lot in defense. In terms of intelligence, we're just at weak AI. So machines are very good at kind of simplicity, things like pattern recognition and supervised learning. But humans still are far superior in these kind of innate human traits. For example, judgment, insight, intuition, retention and use of tacit knowledge, social and emotional intelligence, creativity, and manual dexterity. But this is very rapidly changing, and like I said, if you follow this day by day, you will see examples of research being done, actual technology being developed, where, for example, machines are capable of social and emotional intelligence. Okay, so this is real, it's happening, okay? You just have to trust me on that. And so this has, I believe, implications for complex adaptive systems and agent-based modeling, and cities in particular, that's what we're interested in here. And so the key properties here of ABM and CAS, so ABM, we have agents that are autonomous, heterogeneous, adaptive, capable of learning, using information and knowledge, active and interactive. And in CAS, of course, we have emergent behavior, things like phase transitions, and non-equilibrium states. Okay, what happens when we introduce these new technologies into such systems? So now we can reimagine things, and we don't have a lot of time to go into the details. You can read our paper. We will flesh out everything here. But let me just highlight a few points. So first, in terms of agents, we have potentially new classes of agents here. So we have fully automated, and we're not completely there yet. We have partially automated agents. Excuse me, choke myself. And partially automated, what I mean here is that we still have humans in the loop. And so I can go through numerous examples here. Even with automated vehicles, there are still humans in the loop there in that process. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. And then, of course, we have this sort of hybrid man-machine kind of thing where we're talking about people with technology to augment certain kinds of things and intelligence. Okay, and just like humans, we have a lot of heterogeneity within each of these classes of agents. So AI, for example, machine learning, we have different capabilities and different models. So IBM Watson is far superior to other kinds of AI systems. And there's some very interesting questions here. And we're going to kind of look at this when we get to automated vehicle simulations. Will technological developments in AI, for example, make agents more homogeneous? And will we see something like a reversion to the mean kind of scenario? Okay, so this raises a lot of very interesting questions and implications for cities. Okay, we can talk about memory and storage capacity, so taking in information, retaining that information, and using it to make actions. Machines have greater storage capacity for memory than humans, and soon there's a question with quantum storage and quantum computing and even DNA storage. Will this capacity go to infinity? That has some interesting implications that I'll get to here in a second. In terms of learning, of course, we know with AI and whatnot, we have machine learning going on. So are machines able to learn better than humans? Do they learn faster? Do they learn in different ways? What are the implications there? There's an interesting discussion going on right now in terms of AI. So whether or not AI and machine learning actually has biases, cognitive biases built into it. And a lot of people are arguing that yes, right now with humans in the loop, machines are learning from humans, so they learn the bias. We saw that with Microsoft chatbots, actually in social media, picked up on racism, learned it, and carried it out. So very interesting. And then just the last point here, hybrid man-machine in terms of learning capacity. So just as an example, DARPA just created a device that has learning capacity of 4 times that of humans, that humans have currently, okay? And adaptive behavior, this is from Holland. An agent is adaptive if it satisfies the following. The actions of the agent can be assigned a performance metric, and the agent behaves as to increase it over time. And we know with machine learning, they have very concrete, we use very concrete metrics to assess the performance of those systems, which then get fed back to refine the performance of the systems. Okay? And then we have, of course, interaction and networks going on. So this is where it gets really, really interesting. So we have humans, of course, interacting with humans. We have humans interacting with machines, and machines with humans, machines with machines. And in fact, Internet of Things, we have machines connected to machines talking to each other. Automated vehicles, we have vehicles talking to each other. Okay, this is happening right now. We have machine-to-machine interaction and networking. And interesting things going on here. So one is whether or not this introduces any sort of information or knowledge asymmetries. So some would argue that machines, for example, IBM Watson, already know much, much more than humans. Okay, so does that introduce anything interesting when we think about what's going on in terms of interaction within cities? And another interesting dimension here is the language divide. Of course, machines have their own language, which is computer code, but there are also some developments going on right now where machines are actually developing their own natural language, much like humans, but a language that humans can't understand. Okay? So lots of interesting dimensions going on. And lastly, this is really, really fascinating. So we know that with complex adaptive systems that we have a non-equilibrium state. There was recently a big meeting at Santa Fe with a bunch of world-renowned physicists and Nobel Prize winners in that discipline or in that field. And basically what they were talking about is that with the rise of AI and machines, we will in fact see a situation where, unlike Maxwell, if you're familiar with Maxwell's demon, which is a hypothetical situation which explains why the second law of thermodynamics doesn't actually work, which means that we're, according to that law, we're always moving towards max entropy, but in fact we see the reverse, right? So Maxwell's demon explains that, but the physicists are arguing that with the rise of AI and machines that we'll actually see a reversal of this and we'll start to move towards max entropy and possibly equilibrium situation, which also relates to zero marginal cost society. This is Rifkin's work, which also has implications, of course, for supply and demand and things like that, and potential to move towards equilibrium. Okay, so what does this mean for cities? Before we even get to that, what I want to point out to you is that we see examples with other kinds of complex adaptive systems where in fact machines and the kinds of things that I was just talking about are having implications in those systems. So for example, financial systems, roughly 70% of all trading volume in the stock market is algorithmic trading, is robotic, what do they call them, robot traders. And these are causing very, very profound swings, what they call them flash crashes in the stock market, having very, very serious implications. And there's actually some very interesting agent-based modeling going on in this area. Another example here is social media and the influence of bots. Okay, there's an interesting study that just came out that found that 48 million active Twitter accounts are actually bots. That's roughly 9 to 15% of all Twitter accounts. And there have been some studies that show that they actually had some influence on the last election. So they are having implications. And then Peter mentioned nanocars. So we have or nanorobots in biological systems being used to treat cancer and deliver drugs and which have implications for biological systems. Okay, what about cities? So there's been a lot of work done looking at cities as complex adaptive systems and agent-based modeling. We don't need to go through the details here. But what I want to focus on here is just quickly, this work that's being done on smart cities and automation, some of it involving agent-based modeling. There's a nice paper by Mike Bade actually, which I kind of consider to be a seminal paper talking about these kinds of things. But what's being modeled right now, and it's mainly from technological point of view, is smart grid, Internet of Things, and some on autonomous vehicles. But we have some gaps, not really considering the full characteristics and capabilities of these emerging technologies, very piecemeal, and again, once again, a pure technological perspective. Okay, so quickly, we just wanted to get a sense of this. We did our own agent-based simulations of autonomous vehicles. This is based on the NetLogo model. Okay, we looked at 3 different scenarios, 1-lane highway, 3-lane highway with lane switching, and then city grid network. And some very simple properties of the agents. So you can see car slows down, decelerates if it sees a car close ahead within 30 meters. With the 3-lane, we have another set of rules, very simple rules in terms of lane changing. And then grid network, we introduce intersections and turning behavior there. And then basically the way we include or integrate autonomous vehicles here, we consider them to be a different set of agents. And basically these agents are homogeneous. They behave always in the same way, unlike humans, which have actually built standard deviations around some of these different behaviors. We don't have time to go through the simulations, but let me show you the results. Okay, so this is the 1-lane highway, and what we did is sensitivity analysis looking from 0% autonomous vehicles all the way to 100% autonomous vehicles and average speed. You can see with the 1-lane scenario, we have kind of an interesting inflection point at about 80%, and things improve. Then we introduce some complexity. Here we have lane changing behavior, and you can see this is not as exciting, I don't think, but we looked at 2 different scenarios, one with 100 cars, and then we increased the number of cars. So you can see things kind of gradually increase, and over time the variance in the speeds decrease. And then the last most complex simulation, this was the most interesting. Again, this is kind of based on simplistic rules here, but what we find in this grid network scenario under 2 situations involving traffic levels is that actually as you increase the percent of autonomous vehicles, the system gets worse in terms of average speed. Okay, so future work. So of course, one thing is to build on these simulations and to include more realism into them, and then also bring in the kinds of things that I was talking about when I discussed reimagining complex adaptive systems. So for example, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, integration of big data, AI, all those kinds of things. But I also think that we need to think about the much bigger picture here and the system as one big system of systems here. So we have not just autonomous vehicles, but we have all these other technologies. We have Internet of Things, which in and of itself is a complex adaptive system, and all sorts of other technologies. We have slow dynamics, medium dynamics, fast dynamics, and long-term and short-term states. And ultimately, we want to think about what does this new what will this new technological landscape mean for cities? So this is an interesting study by Meyer and Axhausen et al. That just came out looking at autonomous vehicles and impacts on accessibility. Okay, of course we know that accessibility is a driver of all sorts of things that relate to urban use, land use, urban form, those kinds of things. And so the big question here is, in light of these technological advancements and developments, and fourth industrial revolution, what will cities look like 10 years from now, 50 years, or even 100 years from now? And I think this is a fertile area of research with a lot of potential. So.